Good morning everyone. Today we will be learning about sign test, which is one of the non-parametric tests. Sign test is known for its simplicity. Sign test is used for comparing two correlated samples which are paired off in some criteria. The difference between each pair of observation is obtained and the significance of such difference is tested by sign test. The word signed is given to this test because it uses plus or minus sign instead of quantitative measure. The procedure of sign test is two types. One with a small sample where the total number of sample size is smaller than 25, and number two is total number of sample size is greater than 25. Now let us solve some questions of the first type where the sample size is smaller than 25. Now I will show you how to use sign test and solve the question in a small size sample. Question number 1. A researcher selected 20 students for a study. He divided them into two groups in terms of their intelligence and socio-economic status. These two groups were given training in table manners in two different settings, and they were rated for their performance by the panel judges. The researcher wanted to know which train setup was better. The score of the 10 match pair are given in the table. So this is the table given in the question. Now we will see whether there is any difference in the training of the two groups. As you can see, the total number of sample is 10. So we will use the formula for small size sample in solving the question of sign test. I will tell you step by step how to solve the question. Now the step 1 is to determine the sign of differences and enter these as positive or negative sign in the column. For zero difference, enter 0. As you can see in the first sample of group 1 and group 2, the number is 25 and 24. So difference between the two number is 1, which is a positive number. So we will write it as positive sign. And for the second sample of group 1 and group 2, which is 15 and 16, the difference between 15 minus 16 is minus 1. So the sign we will give it as negative sign. And for the sample number 3 of group 1 and group 2, it's 12 and 12. So the difference between these two numbers, that is 12 minus 12, it's 0. So we will write it as 0. For the sample number 4 of group 1 and group 2, it's 22 and 24. The difference between 22 minus 24 is minus 2. So the sign of the difference will be negative. And for sample number 5, the group 1 and group 2, it's 20 and 15. So the difference between 20 minus 15 is 5. So the sign for the difference will be positive. Similarly, here the sign is positive. Here it's negative, it's positive, positive, and positive. This is how the sign of difference is indicated. After we have determined the sign of differences and entered positive and negative sign in the column, the next step is to count the number of positive, negative, and zero differences. Since the zero differences has neither positive or negative sign, they will be eliminated from the total sample. Here, the total number of positive sign is, as you can see, if you count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the total number of negative sign is 1, 2, 3. And the total number of 0 is 1. Thus, the number of sample size, since the 0 will be eliminated, is 6 plus 3, which is 9. Now that we know the sample size, the next step is to establish null hypothesis, which states that there is no difference between the training of the two groups. An important reminder is that if the value of sign of differences is equal or lesser than 0.01 and 0.05, then we reject the null hypothesis, and if it is greater than 0.01 and 0.05, then we accept the null hypothesis. After establishing null hypothesis, the step number 4 is to determine whether the sample of study is small or large. If n is smaller than 25, it should be taken as small size, but if it is larger than 25, it should be regarded as large sample. The step 5 is to find the x value, which is the number of your sign. As you can see that the number of positive sign is 6 and number of negative sign is 3. So between the positive and negative sign, the number of your sign here is 3. Since 3 is smaller than 6, thus we will take the x as 3. After finding the value of x, we have to find the value of n, which is the total number of sample. Since the n we have established it to be 9, so this is the value of x and n. There are two tables for sign test. The first table is for smaller size sample, which is if the sample is smaller than 25. So this is the table of sign test for smaller size sample, and as we have already established the value of n and x, as you can see here, this is the value of n and this is the x value. And since in our question value of n is 9, and in this row the value of x is 3, thus the value for sign of differences is 0.254. Sign of differences is denoted as p, thus the value of p is 0.254. This value is greater than 0.01 and 0.05. The step 6, that is to examine the value of p, and the p value is greater than 0.01 and 0.05. And as I have already said, if the value of p is greater than both this value, then null hypothesis will be accepted. If it was smaller than this value, then null hypothesis would have been rejected. And since the p-value is greater than both the value, it means that the null hypothesis is accepted, and we can conclude that there is no difference in the training of the two groups. So this is the example for how to solve a question of sign test if the sample size is smaller than 25. Thank you.